Good everyone. I've been jumping around a bit on the build of this boat, so what I've decided to do now is to take a quick stop, show you exactly where I'm up to, particularly around the power motors and a few things that I've changed as I've gone along. And I'm now going to show you how to build the boat up from scratch, all the different parts, and as I go I'll just talk about what I've changed in this little hiatus period. Main thing to say, I'm just going to describe how the motors are connected because it's really quite interesting. So the motor connections work like this. We have the hull that runs out like that. We have prop shafts in there, or that's the housing for the props. And inside the boat I've got perspex holders for the actual motors. Very easy to make in the way that I've done it, and I'd suggest you have a close look at that because it just simplified the process of getting them lined up really nicely. So here we have the bearing. So these are the main prop holders, bearings, whatever you want to call them, down at the end, and I've shown you videos on how I've put that together and lined those up. So the issue is, how do we make all of these bits work together easily and efficiently without multiple bearings? So in the stern of this one here I have one plastic bearing, which is a nice sliding fit for the prop, and the prop sits right there. Now I don't need bearings all the way through, so I've got nothing in here at all, but at the end of this one I have another plastic bearing. So when I slide the prop up through here, it slides between these two bearings here and here, and the water can come up this shaft here, and it can also flow in and out of that shaft there. So what I then did, because we've stopped, the water won't flow anymore through here, has been to put a bearing in there which will just hold on to the end of this prop shaft, bearing in mind that these propellers have been made and soldered onto this shaft. So when I put a little screw in there to hold this onto the shaft, it means the whole thing is held nicely and there is no leakage of water. So the prop continues out this far, and what I then have is the motor sitting there. And what I've done with the motor has been to take a piece of perspex and bend it, and then drill the holes for the motor, connect it up, and then on the lathe to make a nice little connector here, which takes this particular thickness of shaft, which takes the thickness of the shaft from the motor, and more little screws in there. What I do then is, and I've used 2mm perspex for this because it gives a little bit more flexibility. So we put this in, I've bent this using heat, we screw on the motor, and there's a gap between here and the bottom of the boat that I fill with, in this case, car body filler. Make sure it's all turning, make sure that's in, and just leave it, walk away, and after a day this is beautifully aligned and nice and solid. So that's what I've done with the fitting of the motors, and it's worked really well, I've got to say, and easy. Alright, so here's the boat. Most of it has been disassembled. I've kept the bow gun in and the mechanism underneath, purely because it's fairly sensitive, and when I pull this out, the gun comes out of a connection with the lower servo, and it's quite sensitive, and because it's all working so nicely, I'm just going to leave it as it is. I've left inside all of the wires, and I'm about to glue those in place, and these are the wires for the lights. These are the wires for the bow gun, and these are the motors and the stands that I made and I've just described to you. I'm not taking those out right now. And tucked into the wall of the boat on either side are the speed controllers for the motors. And if we progress now down toward the stern, you'll see that here is the connection which I put a 9-volt battery onto to get all the lights going. I haven't used a switch for this, that's completely fine. And all of these wires here connect up to the other bits of superstructure for the lights. So I'm going to tuck all of those out away as we go, but as we go I'm going to show you how all of these little bits fit. So the first thing on the list is to make sure that the bushes are on the ends of the props, and I'm now going to slide the props into the boat, and these are the inner bushes which hold them all together as I just described to you. That bush is still on there. We've got these bushes on the inside now that happily fall off, and you have to remember to replace them, otherwise this is fairly critical. The boat will sink if you don't have these bushes in. And now these are the little connectors that hold the motors nicely in place. So before I go any further now, I'm going to put these connectors on, which now bind it all together. That's a starboard one. I actually annotated that. So once these are all nice and tightly in place, it's just a matter of screwing up the grub screws. Okay, that's lovely. Alright, now I want to mount the rudder servo. I've kept this rudder arm in because in this case it can be a little bit difficult to remove. Someone else put that in and I'm not going to be mucking about with that too much. So here is the rudder, and it screws straight down onto that piece of perspex, and I did this just the same way as I did the motors. Screwed the whole thing on, used carbog, screwed the whole thing on, and then it just comes off, and it's really easy and nice to do. Okay, that's now in place. I'm using one of my nice linkages here. Just have to push that on, make sure that's lined up, put the screw in, and that should be completely fine.